Hello and welcome to our next instalment of Alumni Upfront. I'm delighted today to be joined by Heather Hancock. Very warm welcome, Heather.
Really nice to be here, Mike. Thanks.
As we've been talking off camera, you've had a very busy career. So I think I'm going to kick off on your role as the chair of the Food Standards Agency. That came about in what I think we would all say were quite challenging times. Brexit was kind of mid-flight. What would you say? How has that impacted you as a leader? And what were some of the things that you learned in particularly in that role?
I mean, you're right, Mike. It was really fascinating. When I was appointed, I had to go through one of those select committee hearings that sometimes you have to have for a role in government. And, I go back and look at it, and I was talking about transforming regulation and also a big drive around how we made life better for people with allergies. And then within sort of 3 months of me arriving, all of that was on the back burner because the referendum vote had happened. People might not know very much about the way most regulators operate, but mine, the FSA, was at the far extreme of independence. It operated in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and we were absolutely free of political interference. And that all goes back to mad cow disease and the huge loss of trust the public had in politicians in relation to whether their food was safe. And we really benefited from being so independent because day one, we got the exec round the table and agreed that we would plan for a no deal. We knew we had to build a complete regulatory regime, and the only way to do that sensibly was to assume there'd be nothing we could rely on from Europe. Across government, departments were being told, that wasn't the political line. So departments were being told they couldn't plan for a no deal. So I think we were just so fortunate to be at that arm's length. There were downsides. We had critical dependencies on particularly IT projects being driven by DEFRA, and they were out of our control. We didn't have the weight that ministers had. They weren't going right, but we couldn't really intervene to put them back on track. So there were some aspects of being so far outside the political loop that were difficult. But we benefited from that considerably. The department always operates on an open and transparent basis. We were having our debates about Brexit in open public meetings. They were recorded, they were live streamed. Food issues were on the front pages of the paper day in, day out in those heady months of anxiety about chlorine washed chicken. We were debating what we were going to do with them in public, but nobody was reporting it. So I also learned that if you want to hide something, talk about it openly and nobody ever picks it up.
Well, certainly I've noticed in recent days, Heather, is just how fragile some of our kind of supply chains are. And you look at the CO2 challenge, and it's the kind of the butterfly flaps its wings and look what happens. It's amazing just how these things are very fragile.
And I think one of the things, well, not just through Brexit, but because of COVID-19, when I was still chairing the FSA for the first 12 months of us dealing with the pandemic. And even the most informed and sophisticated businesses in our food system here in the UK, and it is a very sophisticated sector, admitted that they realised they did not know how their sector worked. They didn't know where their dependencies were. They didn't, they were just one step up and down, and the supply chain was as far as they looked.
I think that very neatly segues maybe into the next kind of theme I wanted to talk about, and I guess that boards now are really have a huge balancing act. Balancing the needs of society, focusing on environmental sustainability, governance, technology changes, and in the face of things like the COVID pandemic. What's your experience been, Heather, about striking that balance, and how maybe some of these factors and the balance between them is changing?
I think it's really quite an exciting time from a governance point of view, because probably like many other Deloitte people got so frustrated by all that waffle about purpose as kind of virtue signaling about how wonderful we are. And yet you could really ask a board, have you really understood what your impacts are? Have you really understood the way that your business operates? Have you really tried to match what you say about purpose to your business model? Now we've got investors and others putting the pressure in that area. I still think it's a bit cookie cutter. I think it's still a bit tick box. I'm on the board of a REIT. We're asked questions which are ludicrous for our sort of business, which has an outsourced management operation, yet we're being asked to kind of supply HR policies for when we don't employ anybody. So that can be a bit frustrating, but I do think it's moving in the right direction. And to the extent that I think it also helps boards understand strategic risk with perhaps a different lens on it, and understand how they're contributing to the risk and resilience of kind of the wider society or their sector more broadly. Those are all really valuable things for us to get a grip with. And as I say, if it takes away some of that sort of awful jargon about purpose and doing good and gets back to, because every business should be doing good, and this should be an absolute fundamental part of what a good business looks like. It forces you to explain your business or your organization or your operation and in a way that other people understand. And I knew when I was at Deloitte, getting that into 100 words, well, so what is Deloitte, is quite a challenging thing. And you really do agonize over how do we explain this. Really makes you think afresh about what the firm is and what it's contributing. We were the first professional services firm, I think, in the world, our UK firm, to publish an impact report and to say that we were going to try to explain what positive good we did beyond the kind of the direct client service and the contribution to the exchequer. So, Deloitte must be really well placed to be helping with those conversations and challenging those conversations as well around the board table.
Heather, I mean, your time at Deloitte, in between all of those other fabulous things, I mean, what would you say? What did you take away and learn about your experience at Deloitte? And I'd also like to understand a little bit about how the networks you built and the relationships you have, as being an alumnus of Deloitte, how do they make a difference?
I think you learn so much. I mean, I was a consultant, so those core consulting skills never leave you. About, well, exactly what question are we trying to answer here? It's interesting coming into academia and leading this extraordinary institution, but the skill of trying to nail down the question first is one that lots of people still need to address. So there's that. I think there's the knowing how to go and find the experts and how to get them around the table and how to create an environment where they're going to collaborate and they're going to roll their sleeves up, they're going to be in problem solving mode, but they're going to get something done. I absolutely love that. I think that convening power, both within and outside the firm, was the thing that I thought really, really struck me, that people would down tools, come along, get involved, sort something out. We're always hungry for the next exciting challenge, which was fabulous. And that's still true, because there's something I need some advice on to think about, how would I approach this? You can pick the phone up to an old colleague and they'll so happily share their sort of insight and wisdom and experience and just help you shape your own thinking in your approach. So it's that sense that there's this huge spread of people just happy to share their extraordinary depth of knowledge. When you leave the firm, it can be a bit dangerous because you've sort of got into a mindset of, well, look, how hard can this be? We can fix anything. And you get out of Deloitte, you don't have quite the reach into that sort of talent pool. And you realize, some things are a bit harder than I thought.
Yeah. So Heather, you're now master of a college. How different is that?
The excitement for an academic is the continued pursuit of the question, whereas you and I are in a world where you want to answer the question, and then you want to do it. So I think they keep saying they're a bit surprised about how many things have actually been decided and done in this first year. But I was really fortunate because I started in the midst of COVID, being able to bring in some of that sort of crisis management experience that I picked up in Deloitte, and then particularly running the Food Standards Agency, where it was sort of, we had some major food crises and we dealt with 2,000 incidents a year. So that was really advantageous coming in here.
Heather, it has been fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much. And superb just to hear what an inspirational career journey you've had. So I think I will close it from us here in the virtual studio, and just to everyone, stay safe and keep well. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you, Mike. It's been lovely to talk to you.